All right, what's up? I want to go through my own TikTok page today and go through some of the comments on some of my posts. I have some that are prepared and also some that I just want to scroll through and see what's going on because if any of you have seen any of my posts before, you've probably been just dumbfounded by the types of comments that I get on my posts. And I think the ridiculousness of them is one of the reasons why my page has even been doing so well in the first place because it is just so crazy the things that people will say. So I opened up my page on a new tab that's not linked to my account or anything. So it's just what the average person would view if they don't follow me or anything. I'm not logged in. But this is what we got going. 100K followers, finally. MS Dietetics, former primal bro who escaped disordered eating and got educated, work with me one-on-one. A lot of people don't really know that I was going down that primal path. I was influenced by people like Paul Saladino. I started eating carnivore-ish is how I would describe that. It was a ton of beef. I had a ton of lean meats. I had chicken. Did have some dairy at times. I had some fruit a little bit, but no vegetables, no grains. And what really got me was not eating anything processed or with any sort of additives that were synthetic, any sort of seed oils. That was the stuff that really, really got to me. And it got to the point where I really didn't feel like there was anything left that I could eat. And it got really stressful. My mental health around that time was not really great. And I was largely fueled by the food that I was eating and my mindset around that. So that was kind of my impetus for even making this page. I figured I should maybe give you some of that context before going into this so you know that I'm not just some random D1 hater when it comes to these primal guys. So I'll start by playing this video that I reacted to. Study reveals seed oil is now linked to whatever.
Breaking news. Study reveals that seed oils are now linked to the most aggressive type of breast cancer and colon cancer, seemingly because seed oils are higher in linoleic acid than animal fats like tallow and butter.
So already, this is a graph I see all the time. So these percentages here on the right are the average percent of linoleic acid, which if you don't know what that is, it is essentially an essential unsaturated fat. It's an omega-6 fat that is found in a lot of different plant oils. It is essential, meaning we have to eat it, but people love to say that it causes inflammation because it is involved in different inflammatory pathways, but we know that just because something is there and it is involved doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to act on that pathway. It's like how having money in your bank account doesn't automatically mean that you're going to spend it. It can just sit there and then when you need it, it can be used. But people like to theorize that the more of this you have, the more inflamed you are, but our body really pretty tightly regulates how inflammation works. It does it when you need it. It doesn't always do it when you don't. There are, of course, special cases in specific conditions or diseases, but that's kind of the base around why everyone has such an issue with linoleic acid, and especially with seed oils, is this percentage of the linoleic acid. So you'll see here on this graph, like safflower oil, grapeseed oil, these are the ones they say you should never eat at all. Cottonseed, because they have a high percentage of linoleic acid. You get down into avocado oil and olive oil, they're pretty low, but these ones down here they say are the lowest in linoleic acid, so these are the ones you should be eating. Also note canola oil. This is one that people say is the worst, that you should never have any canola oil. It's very similar to olive oil when it comes to linoleic acid percentage and also the monounsaturated fatty acid percentage, which is some of the healthiest fats that you can be having are your MUFAs. But canola oil is really close to these, even though you'll see people saying that this is the worst one, probably because it's called rapeseed oil, and it's just sounds pretty awful, and this is the one that they've really heavily demonized, even though based on their own logic, it does not have a very high percentage of linoleic acid, depending on where you get it from. But that's where this graph comes from. In the study before, well, not even a study, just a post about some mysterious studies saying that seed oils are linked to these conditions because of linoleic acid. I'll just keep going.
Because seed oils are higher in linoleic acid than animal fats like tallow and butter. So this sounds really scary, and I wanted to get to the bottom of it. So I tried to dig deeper and see if they provided a reference for the claims that they were making, and of course they didn't in the comments, in the caption, in the video, anywhere. So
It's so frustrating when I see these posts, especially when they have sometimes hundreds of thousands of likes, and I can't even figure out where they got the thing that they're talking about. And there's all these people in the comments who are so upset by it, and rightfully so. If you were trying to care about your health and you're going and looking on social media to try and figure out what is right, what's the best thing to do, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see these big popular posts. You're going to see these bright, flashy headlines that tell you things are bad for you. And there's no way to prove them wrong because they don't even have the evidence that they've been basing the post off of. So what I like to do is find what it is they're talking about, dig deeper, and then say why it's wrong. But when they don't even provide what they're talking about, I can't really do that. So instead, I have to go find other evidence that proves that they're wrong, which is whatever. It is what it is.
One of trying to verify a claim is seeing if they provide a reference, which they didn't. And step two is to then look into the research yourself and see if it backs up what they were saying. So to do that, I looked into research on seed oils and chronic disease and mortality. This study found that replacing 5% of your calories from saturated fats like butter or tallow with the same amount of calories from unsaturated fats like seed oils was associated with reductions in total mortality of 27%. And this systematic review and meta-analysis found that the more linoleic acid that people ate, the lower their risk of heart disease. This systematic review of randomized controlled trials found that there is virtually no evidence from randomized controlled trials, which are the gold standard trials, showing that more linoleic acid leads to more inflammation. So why?
So I kind of want to clarify the randomized controlled trial comment there and why it's the gold standard, because people will also complain a lot about observational research and associations and correlations, because associations and correlations, they're basically the same thing. They're both observational data, meaning they can't infer causation. We can't say that one thing causes another because we are just observing what happens. We can do a study where we observe the people that eat the most amount of seed oils versus the people who don't, and we can look at the trends between them, but we can't say that, hey, the seed oils are causing this one thing, because there could be something like something else they're doing in their life that is making them eat more seed oils, or is for whatever reason leading to them doing that, that is also going to affect the outcome. That is why we need these trials where we actually specifically try to get rid of all of these extra variables so we can study it specifically. So I talk about these randomized control trials that are in, let me see if I can even find this still. Whoa, whatever. Randomized control trials where essentially we are taking an intervention group and comparing it against a control group. So the intervention group, the only thing that should be different between them and the control group is that they have the intervention that we're trying to study. So everything else should be as controlled for as we can, except for the linoleic acid, the seed oils. That is why it is easier to say that this specific thing is causing something, because we know that really is the only main difference between the two groups. And of course, there are a lot of criticisms about that, but I wanted to just kind of provide some clarification there.
That more linoleic acid leads to more inflammation. So why do people make seed oils out to be this cancer-causing, inflammation-driving, chronic disease thing? I don't really know.
Also, I have the spaghetti squash. It went really viral in a video I made on Saladino, because he says that spaghetti squash is animal-based, because I guess technically it's a fruit, and fruit is allowed on an animal-based diet, even though the majority of its calories are coming from fruit. I don't know, but this thing makes an appearance quite often.
Well, actually, I do know, and it's because having a boogeyman and having something to point your finger at and blame for the entirety of the world's problems is easy. Easier than understanding the actual nuance and complexity of chronic disease.
So yeah, I stand by that. It's just easier to blame a singular thing for every single problem that's ever existed, and that seems to be what happens with seed oils. So now let's go into the comments. Looking at the main page without being logged in, I actually see more of the positive ones than the negative ones, which I feel like I see a lot more when I'm on my phone logged in. But we'll see. Please let that poor squash go free one day. What about rapeseed oil? So as I said earlier, rapeseed oil is the same thing as canola oil, but it sounds a lot scarier, so people tend to think that it is worse for you. It's just a bad name. It comes from the rapeseed. That's just what it's called. But here's it right here, really close to olive oil, potentially even lower linoleic acid than olive oil. Let's see. When we can show a mechanistic cause and effect study that proves seed oils are healthy and non-inflammatory in the body, you're only showing associations and links that can easily be manipulated to support either side, man. Not really. I kind of talked about this already, but I showed a review or a meta-analysis on randomized controlled trials, which are looking at actual cause and effect studies. Mechanisms do matter to understand, but also when you kind of extrapolate a mechanism to see or to say that it's causing something, it's just not really fair, because like I said, this linoleic acid, it is involved in inflammation, but it doesn't mean that it's actually causing inflammation, because there are a trillion other mechanisms happening at the exact same time that are regulating that are doing different things, that are anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, pro-oxidant, all this stuff. So you can't just say, hey, there's a defined mechanism where linoleic acid's involved in inflammation, therefore, if you eat a seed oil, it makes you inflamed. Instead, what you should do is look at what actually happens in these outcome studies, what actually happens when you feed people more seed oils, and you'll pretty much unanimously find it's not harmful, except for a few randomized controlled trials back in the 60s, which were extremely flawed and tend to be the only thing that people really reference when they are anti-seed oil and trying to reference some sort of interventional studies. they just they don't hold up to the more modern research that we have, and we do have modern research. Let's see. When seed oils reach a certain temperature, it turns toxic. Avocado oil, olive oil, and coconut oil have a higher smoke point and can take higher temperatures before becoming toxic. So pretty much everything, once it reaches a certain temperature, can start to produce carcinogenic compounds. But saying that avocado, olive, and coconut oil have higher smoke points isn't really true. Olive oil actually has a much lower smoke point than most of these other oils. It's somewhere around 300 degrees, which is like medium temperature cooking if you're cooking on a stove. Coconut oil does have a higher one, but also it's a saturated fat, and you're getting in the debate between saturated and unsaturated fats. Also, I don't know if it contains really any linoleic acid, which is the essential acid. Avocado oil, fair enough. It's got a decently high smoke point. I use it sometimes. I've been using grapeseed oil lately because someone brought it over to my house as a gift when they came over because it was fitting. But yeah, seed oils, several of them do tend to produce slightly more carcinogenic compounds, specifically when you were looking at repeatedly heating at high temperatures. So that means if you're deep frying in a restaurant, it's really the only time you're going to be repeatedly heating an oil to a high temperature like that. But also, no one's arguing that deep fried foods are healthy, and that seems to be the same argument I keep seeing, is that these produce these toxic compounds, which, if you're eating a ton of deep fried foods, maybe. But also, even with that, we still don't see the outcomes showing that they cause negative health effects. So again, I'm waiting to see outcomes, and I want to believe that these are bad. I want to believe that this giant movement against seed oils is really founded in the research, but there's just not a lot of outcome data. And people really get kind of lost in the weeds when it comes to smoke points and toxicity and carcinogenic compound production and all this stuff, that they themselves get confused, and they might end up, trying to pan fry something on high heat with olive oil and making a lot of smoke and then eating a bunch of carcinogens because they just don't really know. Hey, can you drop this? Most seed oil randomized control trials only last 4 to 12 weeks and measure short-term biomarkers. Chronic disease develops over decades. Observational associations are vulnerable to residual confounding and measurement error, so the true strength of the effect is uncertain. So, again, valid critiques, but also kind of done in the name of, dismissing all research ever, which again I see happens a lot, is people like to point out that there are flaws in several different types of research and basically say that there's nothing you can trust. But you have to understand, these studies have flaws and strengths, and you have to take them for what they are with their flaws. And if you understand how research works, you can understand these flaws. Of course, a randomized controlled trial over 4 to 12 weeks is not going to be enough to extrapolate over the entire lifespan. We know that. There are also ones that are much longer than that. But when you are looking at things like inflammatory markers, you can see that within a couple weeks or within a couple months. They're not just going to study things in a window of time that just doesn't really make much sense. I mean, that actually does happen. But again, you should be able to understand that when you're trying to interpret the research. That becomes your burden to bear because you are the one trying to interpret it and make claims about it. So I think a lot of people view themselves as being more knowledgeable than the actual researchers who are doing the research, and they think they've thought of things that the researchers never really thought of. Like, the researchers know, for the most part, what they're doing because they have to get funding for these studies. They have to peer review these studies. They have to have multiple people involved, especially people who are experts in the field. And oftentimes, though there can be flaws, they aren't so huge that you can just dismiss every single thing that a study says. So again, valid critiques, but just have a greater understanding of the research, and you can know what you can take from it and what you can't. I don't like when people just critique things as much as they can to try and say that they're completely useless, because no research is useless. At the very least, you can say, hey, this is a super flawed study. What can we learn from it to improve upon it? What can we still take from these conclusions? And that even goes for those randomized controlled trials I talked about that were done in the 60s that showed that there were negative health outcomes associated with the seed oil intake. But again, these flaws show you that maybe those negative health outcomes were because of the flawed design in the study. So both issues mentioned in the initial claim also have the biggest preventive care being dietary fiber. The same people who are telling you to stay away from seed oils, for the most part, are also saying to stay away from fiber because it's not essential and all this stuff, which is true. You don't have to eat fiber to survive, but I don't know why you would avoid it when avoiding it, or by avoiding it, you're cutting out a ton of really good foods that are nutritious. You are also just increasing your risk for several different conditions later in life, which could be avoided, especially colorectal cancer, which is now the leading cause of cancer death in men who are in their 20s. And that's not a good thing. That is directly related to the push against dietary fiber and towards more high-fat red meat. It's ridiculous. I'm with Daniel. Please go vegan. Maybe one day. Switching from saturated fats to unsaturated fat is only treating the symptom, not the cause. Saturated fats together with high blood sugar cause more mortality, but correlation does not mean causation. Problem is elevated blood sugar levels, which most people have. Switching to unsaturated fat reduces risk for these people, but it still does not fix the issue. Hold on, I'm going to need to understand this a little bit more. Switching from saturated fats to unsaturated fats is only treating the symptom, not the cause. Saturated fats together with high blood pressure cause more mortality. Well, yeah, that is true. So the mortality from heart disease is, I believe, what they're talking about, because that's what's mainly associated, or the biggest problem associated with more saturated fat causing higher cholesterol, then causing the heart disease. And that's because heart disease essentially develops by, there's several risk factors, but there has to be damage to the endothelial lining, the lining on the inside of the blood vessel, and the lipids in your blood, the fats have to develop an arterial plaque, which then can cause all kinds of problems. It can break off and cause a clot or a stroke. It can develop just atherosclerosis, hypertension, all these different issues. Hypertension being a modifiable risk factor for heart disease. But saturated fats together with high blood pressure cause more mortality. It would increase your risk because high blood sugar also means more high blood pressure, which can cause increased chance of damaging your endothelial lining. But correlation does not mean causation. I mean, there's a pretty strong mechanism there. Problem is elevated blood sugar levels, which most people have, but also having high cholesterol and having high blood sugar usually tend to go together because they just happen with an unhealthy diet, and people who eat unhealthy just tend to develop several of these risk factors together, most of them tied with obesity, unfortunately. But we also know that some things are causative. We know that things are risk factors, independent risk factors for these conditions. So I don't know. People, again, just taking information and kind of being interesting with it. But switching to unsaturated fat reduces risk for these people, but it still does not fix the issue. I mean, if switching from saturated to unsaturated fat is going to lower your diet or your serum cholesterol, which is a risk factor for developing heart disease, then it does kind of fix the issue, though the issue probably also lies in body weight, activity level, just general dietary status. Complex issue that people are trying to simplify. Iconic as usual. Thank you from the dietitian. Let's see. Anything else in here that's noteworthy? Why are you even defending an industrial oil squeezed out of the poisonous seeds? It's not even just about the PUFAs. Again, people love to use just crazy words. Industrial oil is one that you'll see a lot. I think they even described it as that in the new dietary guidelines, or maybe they use some other artificial oil, something like that. But industrial oil sounds scary instead of just saying edible oil that can be used for cooking. It's industrial is what makes it sound like it's not meant for humans. Squeezed out of the poisonous seeds, like, yeah, you probably don't want to eat the seeds, but that's why we extract the oil from them, because you can eat the oil that is squeezed out of the seeds and is not necessarily industrial. It's just a lot of buzzwords that make it sound too scary. What else we got here? Let's move on to the next one. This is my page. So let's see what I posted here. Oh, let's start this over again.
Yo, bro, what do you think of this?
Let me take a look. Okay, not. Wait, this has a gram of fiber in it. You don't want to eat fiber. Don't you know how bad that is for you?
Wait, why not? Who told you that?
I mean, someone who like really knows their stuff. He's talking about how bad fiber is. Like it makes you fat because it messes with your gut microbiome and it gives you kidney stones.
Is he a doctor?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, probably.
A doctor in what?
Well, he's a chiropractor, but he's like really good at nutrition stuff. I see his stuff all the time.
Yo, bro, what do you think of this?
So this was kind of meant to be a little bit ridiculous, taking Nutella, which I'm sure a lot of people have a ton of criticisms over, and complaining about the fiber out of all things, just because fiber is such a hot topic right now. I used to eat so much Nutella when I was a kid, and people say I only looked away now because I developed on red meat and everything. Dude, I developed on McDonald's and Nutella and mac and cheese there was not a whole lot of red meat in my diet until I started doing the more primal stuff. But by then I was 19 years old. I was in college. So you can say that the Nutella contributed to how I developed. But of course, the one friend who thinks college is a scam, again, I am coming in support of college here. And of course, I get a lot of appeal to authority fallacy comments. But this one is very silly. So people will use the appeal to authority fallacy to discredit anyone who is credentialed. Anyone, you can't even see, I have my diplomas up here. Anyone who is credentialed or has a degree in a field because they disagree with what they have to say. And they want, again, another boogeyman. So anytime you come to bat for college, anytime you say, hey, an expert said this, they'll say that's an appeal to authority. But you also have to understand, appeal to authority works when there is an irrelevant authority. It's like this top comment, Dr. Eric Berg says that's not good for you. I think they're probably joking here with that username. I think they are. But so Dr. Eric Berg, he's a chiropractor. He's one of the most well-known nutrition influencers right now. He has millions of followers across platforms, and every single thing he says is just wrong. Maybe I'll do a video going through everything he says. But he is technically a doctor because he's a doctor of chiropractic, and everyone flocks to him for his nutrition advice because they agree with him, everyone who doesn't really know what they're talking about. That is an appeal to authority because they'll say, hey, he's a doctor, he knows what he's talking about. But you, Mr. Dietitian, I'm not yet registered, I'm registration eligible, but they'll say, you, Mr. Dietitian, you are using an appeal to authority because you went to school for this. It's like, no, you are using an appeal to authority because this person is not even the correct authority for the thing that we're talking about. But meanwhile, you're saying me, who did study this thing, I am the problem. Like, no, I just want you to understand that if the general consensus among the experts who spent at least 6 years studying in the field about the specific thing is different from the person who did not study this thing and didn't get any formal training in it, then the people in the consensus might be the ones who are right. And you should maybe consider that. It's like if I had to get my car fixed, I wouldn't go to a dentist. And if I had to get my teeth fixed, I wouldn't go to a mechanic. Because these people don't actually study the thing that I need fixed. That's pretty common sense, but people are now going to chiropractors and psychiatrists for nutrition advice, or people who have no background at all in this specific thing and saying that they are the experts, and anyone who's actually an expert in it, that's an appeal to authority. That is what's very silly about that. To look at a tub of Nutella and pick out fiber is the worst thing. Is so funny. That's the point. See what's going on. Shalom officer, you'll of course see a lot of these. 10 likes. Yeah, that's this is one that I get a lot. I am of German and English and a little bit of Eastern European descent. No Jewish in me. But people love to call me a Jew or an Israel lover, or say I'm getting paid by Netanyahu for posting these things. I don't get paid at all for these things, especially not now that my big Instagram account is taken down where I ran my business. Dr. Anthony Chafee is a real doctor. Again, doctor. So again, it comes down to they are saying that he is a real doctor, therefore he can be trusted, even though that is the appeal to authority, because he is not an expert in the relevant field. It is silly. Fiber is good for you is like saying fiber is good for you. Statements like these typically lack specificity about the type that's ingested and in what context. They can be both true and false. Yeah, but it's pretty straightforward that fiber is associated with better health outcomes and all that stuff. And the context where fiber is not good for you are so slim that 99% of the people are not going to even relate to that. So I don't really understand why this was relevant. What the Nutella ingredients? Yeah, this is pretty much what Nutella is made out of. Palm oil saturated fat, by the way. You'd think they'd be all over that. Skimmed milk powder, which is a low fat, high protein powder, low fat cocoa, hazelnut sugar, and whatever. Of course, it's not the healthiest thing to be eating. Fiber is only for people who don't eat good. And I said more like people who eat well naturally get enough fiber, which if you're not eating good and you're not eating fiber, that means eating fiber will make you eat good. I don't know. These people don't know what they're saying. Whatever. Let's see. I had one more post that I wanted to pick out, but I'm at 24 minutes. Maybe I'll do this one next time. This one would be a big one to get into, but this is essentially a video on the Maha Super Bowl commercial. They use Mike Tyson talking about processed food and all that stuff. We'll get into that next time, but let me know what else you want to see. I kind of want to do more reaction style content because I like this because I would do it on Instagram, but I could really only do like 1 or 2 minutes per video, and sometimes I have a lot more to say. So I'm gonna do this. Might start live streaming. I don't know. I'm just making some low effort videos on YouTube right now while I learn how this whole thing works. So let me know what you want me to talk about, and I'll do it.